Should be going. There we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Are you sharing out the link?
Yep.
Okay. Turn my light up a little bit. Okay, I will be right back. But don't wait for me. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Hold on, just getting this sent out to everyone. We're going live. Okay, sending out the link on Twitter. All right, so it looks like, oh, wait a second, hold on. I sent out the wrong link, hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
So the big topic is definitely the DNC lawsuit. Ridiculousness.
And who exactly, I had a long talk with my dad about this earlier, and he seemed to be just as confused as I was. Who exactly are they suing?
Russia. The whole country. Russia and the Trump campaign. Oh crap, hang on. And wait, who else is included in that?
Are they suing WikiLeaks as well?
Yes, WikiLeaks.
You gotta be kidding. Wow, that's absurd. So they're suing. Hold on, let me pull it up here.
Yes, they're
suing WikiLeaks, the Trump campaign.
WikiLeaks.
And
I'm always gonna have my WikiLeaks mug here.
And Russia.
Yeah.
So my dad is starting to agree with me on this. He thought the whole thing was absurd.
It is.
Like, so what? So they've got to pay lawyers for this. So they're taking resources that they could be using to help their candidates.
Yep.
They're funneling it into this nonsense. My dad was even confused.
Yep. Brilliant, isn't it?
It's bizarre.
Okay.
I don't know what they're thinking, because the other thing was, my dad even admitted this. He's like, okay, well, what evidence do they have? Because my dad and I have talked about this for some time, and that is that thus far, there has been absolutely no conclusive evidence that there was any kind of election tampering or hacking, as it were.
Right.
What may have taken place is that somebody who was working for the Clinton campaign pulled some information off of their server and handed it off to somebody. That's not a hack. That's a leak. It's a completely different situation. It's not necessarily even illegal. I mean, depending on what this staff member signed in terms of a non-disclosure agreement, but aside from that, that's all they've got.
Right. Well, I mean, it crossed my mind. I thought, well, is someone in there trying to finally bring this down? Are there maybe some people that are, I don't know, it's a stretch to think that, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing too. Somebody I can't remember where I saw this. I think it might have even been the New York Times. Somebody was talking about, there was a reporter who happened to get somebody who was in a conference call about this whole situation. And during the call,
Uh-oh.
what are
You're
we
freezing.
doing? Because
Say that again, Brian.
they said, well, what do we? This was somebody who was working for the DNC. This was
Mm-hmm.
a DNC staff. We've got races going on right now
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
over the country.
Right.
We need to be supporting these candidates, and instead you're going to take these resources that we desperately need, and you're
Mm-hmm.
going to put them into this lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And the staffer was completely confused,
Mm-hmm.
and there was really not much of a response.
I don't know. I mean, the first thing, other thing I thought was, okay, I thought back to that argument I had online with Michael McFall, where he told me, but that was when I think I first heard about CrowdStrike. And, I looked it up and I'm like,
Right.
okay, this is a private company that they hired. I mean, so they're going to sue, then aren't they going to have to, the discovery process of all of this evidence, aren't they going to like uncover what actually happened? But then, because they never turned over their servers.
No, they didn't, and
And
that is a point of contention that I've often brought up with my dad, and my dad is
yeah,
even baffled by that. He's like, "Yeah,
yeah,
he's like, I don't understand that either. Wouldn't they just turn over their servers to the FBI as they were told to?" I mean, he was even confused. So it's all very bizarre because all this stuff. If this lawsuit's going to go forward, like you said, there's going to be evidence finding. I mean, they're going to have to start to look at the chain of events
mm-hmm,
and start to kind of connect the dots, and it's going to get pretty dicey.
yep. All right, sorry, pardon my distraction. Just a minute. I'm trying to. I thought I had this set D Live to with this thumbnail thing, and it's telling me it's too big. I'll try again. Let's see.
Lucas Pompey says the link isn't working.
Really? That's odd.
Hold on.
Huh.
Let me see if it's the same one you sent me. Uh, no,
Oops.
no, it looks. Hold on. Hold on.
Hang on. I'm gonna go off video just a sec.
Okay, there we go.
I'm here. I'm just off video for a minute.
No problem.
Okay, because I'm sorry. I'm trying to monkey with this stupid thumbnail here. Okay, did you get the right one posted?
Yeah, I got the right one in there.
Okay, and I should do the same. Let's see.
It was the one you dropped in Keybase.
Oh, right. Okay. See. Okay. Oops.
Copy. Okay. So that finally went out. Hopefully people oh, someone wants to join in.
Hello, Lucas. It's been a long time. Haven't talked to you in a while.
Hello?
Yes, it has been a while.
Hey, Lucas.
How are you?
I'm alright.
So I think last time I heard from you, you were telling, it's been a long time, you were telling about how the garden at your college couldn't go forward because of, I think it was something in the soil, right? That was deemed like dangerous for it. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, it was contaminated with toxic chemicals that they had been spraying on the lawn.
Oh,
Wow.
that's too bad. Well, is there anything that can be, I guess that can't be remedied. You have to be careful. Like we're planting a garden for our backyard. We've never had one and always wanted to do it, but you have to be careful just with the wood you use. A lot of that pressure treated lumber has arsenic in it, and I've known about that for a while, but it can, I guess, seep directly into the soil, which is not good.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's why they say to use instead of using chemically treated, to try to find heat treated lumber.
mm,
Oh, okay.
or maybe cedar or something,
Well,
perhaps.
there's like a lot of times like pallets. It'll say like if you get like a pallet from somewhere, it'll
Mm-hmm.
say if it's like chemically treated or if it's heat treated, like on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then wood should say like if it's new, and then older wood. Um, like there's different ways to tell. Depends on like if there's any markings on the wood or not. But one of the things you can do is like if there's any mills like within driving distance, you could go out and get like rough cuts of the wood. So like you might want to wear gloves when you handle it, but you can get giant boards to build raised beds
Mm-hmm.
for very cheap.
Cool. Um, so what are you doing that anywhere else, or did you just kind of give up on that effort right now? I mean, are you working on any other community gardens or?
I'm talking with the guy who does one of the church gardens in the next town over, and like I gave him some seeds, and I've been talking with him, and I went over and helped him out a bit. And then I also met a guy locally who's trying to start up his own sustainable farming business, and he's already kind of got certain parts of it set up. But like I was talking to him about like what his future plans are and everything, and like shared some ideas and everything. And he was saying that if I went out and like helped him install solar panels and stuff this summer and dig some trenches and swales and stuff to help prevent the erosion, he'd like give me some land of his to grow vegetables and trees and stuff on.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, just thinks because it's like 30-minute drive from my house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's not good. Well, so what you're still at, are you a sophomore now? Or you're, wait, I can't remember. You're like just started college, right?
Yeah, but
Freshman or so?
I did classes in high school, so like technically this semester I'd be a sophomore, like credit
Oh,
wise.
okay. I see.
Okay.
Well, I just think it's amazing. I know, I think we were like, I think I was driving my daughter to the airport. Oh, it was when we were on our way to the People's Convergence and we were listening in on Yvonne's show. And she was just amazed at it because she was like, if all of us would do these kinds of things, she was just thought it was really cool what you're working on. I mean, that's where it starts, right? So,
Yeah, well, that's why it's tough because like after I did that soil test and like gave up on it, all of a sudden I'm meeting all these people who are like, "You were the one who wanted to start the garden club. I was gonna join that. I was gonna join that." Like
aw,
all these people, like I had like over a dozen people tell me that they would have joined it. All these people that I didn't know back when I was trying to start it, but I know now, who all were like super into the idea.
mm-hmm. Oh man, that kind of sucks. Well, hopefully you can do something with it. Maybe not on the campus, but get a group of people together. Um, yeah, I don't know, in another space, like you
Yeah,
said.
well, that's one of the things
Yeah.
I'm looking at is I'm trying to find some land closer that I could get
Mm-hmm.
a group of people to go on. Because like, while
Right.
it'd be cool to have like that farm, help that guy get that farm up and running.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I'm very into local sustainable farming. It's just such a long drive, you
Yeah.
know, from my house uh, that it doesn't seem like it would be worth to go out there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be nice to have a place in town where I could get other people to come and do it too.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about going over and asking the city of New Philly if they had any spare land that wasn't being used because there's tons of vacant lots all around the city where houses used to be, and then they tore them
Mm-hmm.
down. So like I'm gonna see if there's any vacant lots that they're not planning on selling because like some of them say for sale and some of them don't. So if there's any that they're not planning on selling, they could turn that into a community orchard or a neighborhood orchard or something like that. And it would be really neat if all of a sudden all over town there was all these tiny little neighborhood orchards popping up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, it's crazy when you think about how many generations, though, you just, food comes in a package from the store, and it's sort of changing that mindset of growing gardens and really like actually eating the food that's grown out of the ground. I don't know. I mean, I've been through the line at the grocery store. This is a few years ago, but there was a young guy running the register, and honestly couldn't identify the produce I was buying, like radishes. And,
Wow.
And I'm not picking on him. I just thought, oh my God, like we only eat fruit roll-ups. So we don't, I mean, and this is, some people, it's by choice. They want to eat junk. But I think for a lot of people, or at least how it started, probably in the 80s or, well, no, even before that. I know my grandmother was happy to have some packaged food when she was, busy with 4 kids. But as like women entered the workforce too, and you've got both people working all the time, those convenience foods just took over. So kind of getting back to eating food that's actually grown, is a big leap for some people, I think. And, it's not till you really eat that stuff, if you haven't, that you realize, oh wow, I like feel better, eating like this. So, and it's fun to learn how to cook. Although I can't say I've been doing much of that lately.
Well, and you're right. Like that's the tough thing is like getting people just to try it, because if they tried it, then they would understand what I mean whenever I say that they'll feel better. Like nobody really understands just how much better you feel until they do it themselves.
Right. Exactly.
And it takes so much self-control and discipline to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, I tried to get off wheat for like several years, and it took me like 2.5 years to finally like get off of it to the point to where I'm able to like, even when I'm hungry, turn down that stuff. Mm-hmm. Because like I've gotten to the point where like even when I'm hungry, like I can be like starving, and I'll realize that it's better to be starving for another hour than it is to eat that stuff and then feel sick for the next 4 hours.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then have cravings for several days or weeks after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know. I remember my daughter when she was like 4. We were visiting my husband's grandparents' house, and she got little tomatoes out of the garden, straight out of the garden. And before that, she wouldn't eat them, like ones I had bought. I guess I had probably bought conventional, or even some of the organic you buy. If it's been sitting around for 5 days, a week, or whatever, it's not going to taste like it does right out of the garden, right? And then she was like, I love tomatoes. So like the taste different. And when you're little, like little kids can really taste the difference in different types of milk or the produce and all that. And so, and she was like, I love tomatoes, but only if they're right out of the garden, So
well, that's me, still like whenever I was little, the first tomato I tried was a store-bought tomato, and that put me off tomato for 10 years of my life. Mm-hmm. Like ugh, that was like one of the worst things I ever had. And then, after I started trying more things and everything, I went to my grandma's, and she had a garden tomato, and she cut it open, and the smell of it was just so like savory that I had to try it. And after I tried it, I was like, what have I been missing out on all these years? Mm-hmm. It's like there's such a huge night and day difference between a fresh garden grown tomato and those store-bought things that we call tomatoes. And it's interesting, like the more research you do on like nutrition, all of the most nutritious foods don't store very well.
No, they don't.
Like you have to freeze them, and that's like the only way to do it. Like, because like if you want to get blueberries, right, the high bush blueberries, which aren't blue all the way through, they're good for you, but they're not near as good for you as the low bush like blueberries and the wild blueberries are, which are like tinier and they're blue all the way through. But you can't get the low bush blueberries on the shelf like fresh. You have to buy them frozen. But it's crazy because if you buy those frozen ones, they are so much more nutritious for you than the fresh ones, because the fresh ones are bred to store. And it's just like what they say about preservatives in your food. If you have vegetables and fruits with natural preservatives in them. That's, the reason that they have those preservatives in them is because they don't have as much vitamins and minerals and nutrients and enzymes. And the enzymes are like the healthiest part of the vegetable. Like,
Right.
like there's a place for vegetables that store well, like squashes and potatoes and stuff, because you have to survive through cold winters in certain climates. But if it's like summertime, we shouldn't be eating all of the vegetables off of the store shelves, that have been there for weeks or months, and that have had to ripen using gas, that was pumped into a refrigerator, rather than ripened like through natural, sunshine, and getting the minerals and stuff it needs from the roots to properly get all the flavors and the seeds to, like there's a lot that goes into it. And I mean, it's crazy because like glyphosate, Roundup, everyone sprays on everything, and nobody realizes that stuff, not only does it cause like lymphoma, but it also binds up all the minerals in the soil and makes it unavailable to the plants, so the plants can't get the vitamins and the minerals out of the soil.
Right.
And it completely desertifies like the soil. But then it also binds the nutrients that do get absorbed by the plant to the plant, so that your body can't intake them. And it basically starves you. So even if you eat a lot of store-bought vegetables, you're still not getting most of the nutrients from those vegetables because of the glyphosate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can find a food co-op, or like I refuse to set foot in Whole Foods anymore. We go to the food co-op, or if you have a garden, that's great. So we actually, it's funny we're talking about gardening, because last weekend we had Teddy from the Guion Journal come on, which was a fantastic conversation. I love his writing, and I thought it was really, really cool. And he's got several other writers, so if you haven't checked it out, check out Guion Journal, Gion. He's got several other writers, and one of them I found on Twitter and followed her, and her name's Kim Butler, and she's got a blog. I think I can't remember. Hang on. Anyway, here we're talking about planting a garden, and she has all this really cool stuff on gardening and just healthy food and all that stuff. Where did it go? I'm gonna find it. I think it's. Wait a minute. Nope, I'm in the wrong one. Anyway, that might be cool. We were talking about maybe having some of the other writers come on and talk, and so that's really cool. She does that. You would know exactly what she's talking about, I'm sure, Lucas. You know more than a lot of people about this stuff. So we were talking about the ridiculous lawsuit.
Oh yeah, I barely put any research into that. I've been so busy the last few days.
Well, it's part of why we do this is because it's impossible to absorb all of the crazy amount of info shoved at you every day. So we usually have, when we get bigger groups, somebody has read more on something than other people. So then we all learn something. But basically, yeah, they're suing WikiLeaks, the Trump campaign, and Russia. I guess the whole country, Russia.
That's so stupid. Like that lawsuit, they have to lose, right?
I don't know. You start to wonder. One of my biggest fears is that. Okay, so we were saying a few bit ago that there will have to be a process of discovery, and so maybe they didn't show their servers. Everything's probably been cleaned off. But one of my biggest fears is that something can be like fabricated to show. Like, what wasn't that kind of the with the Goosifer? Was it Goosifer or the something bear? What was that? Cozy Bear or something? I can't remember all the names, but that was possibly made to look like it. Like, how obvious was that it was like Russian writing and stuff? I believe it
Yeah.
was Ray McGovern that was talking on in some interview about that specifically. That so if they kind of plant something, then how? I mean, who's going to be able to decipher? I don't know. And who do we trust that's going to be looking into this? If the IT people do what?
It's pretty bizarre. I mean, the you know, go down to connect all the dots is going to be it's going to be really tricky.
Yeah, let's see if I can find this really quickly. I know it was Ray McGovern, and I can't remember who was interviewing him. Someone I hadn't heard of before. But yeah, he just said, it looked obviously like a plant. Like, oh, they just happened to leave, trails of that it was this Russian person. I mean, it's just so obvious. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, all of it, all the propaganda is getting so obvious now. I mean, like the whole Syria chemical weapons thing is all so obviously fake.
Oh,
but yeah, there's people who buy it, I mean, it was like, I just finished watching Jimmy Dore's video with that Bolivian actress who looks kind of like Sofia, Vergara, and like they were talking about the chemical weapons attack and like how it wasn't really a chemical weapons attack, it was dust storm, because the whole city is nothing but dust and like half of it's underground. And whenever you're being shelled, that shakes the place and puts all the dust into the air. And so there was a lot of hypoxia going on. And like all of the images were of the sandstorm and the hypoxia. And then, the White Helmets came in there and filmed their video throwing water in children's faces and making them cry, and then left. And there was no evidence of a chemical weapons attack. And then, we happened to bomb the place where supposedly there was chemical weapons, even though everyone was able to go and stand in that place the next day to investigate it without getting their faces melted off, or burned, and without suffocating, and do investigations of it and find out that it was an anti-venom medical facility. It's all from the start been so obviously a hoax in order to get us to stay in Syria that it's just like the fact that they can get away with that much bullshit is insane.
Wow, it's been a really long time since I've seen you. How are you?
How's it going, man?
I've been busy. I've been really busy. So I just got back into school last week from the teachers' walkout in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
Which, I mean, has been nice to be a part of and to experience after I got my first portfolio test taken care of. I was able to be there for 3 days last week. But Friday, me and my mom's schedule just didn't line up quite well enough for us to be able to go out there. The strike, the biggest part of the strike has officially ended, but
tell us more, because I know it was happening, but like I was saying a minute ago, there are too many stories and we can't keep up with all of them. So
so as far as the strike itself is concerned, that phase of the resistance, for lack of a better phrase, is over. The Senate Republicans have pretty much made it clear that they plan to obstinate any kind of further negotiations with the Oklahoma Educators Association. And there's currently efforts being led by our glorious former Senator Tom Coburn to basically kill any possibilities for teachers' pay raises, because what he's doing is that he's leading a coalition for an audit. And the way that the bill is specifically written is that if any audit occurs, that shuts down any funding for that bill. So on top of this, they just repealed the motel tax. No, they didn't repeal the motel tax. That's a lie. Which tax was it that they repealed? I think it was No, it may have been the motel tax. Oh, okay, so they repealed one of the taxes that was supposed to pay for it. They made it up with another tax, but now the issue is that we've got $50 million. The gambling tax is only going to last for a year, and then it gets diverted into the general fund. The gas tax, the gasoline and diesel tax, lasts for 1 year also, and that one's only going to last. And once that ends up, it goes directly into the transportation fund. And then there's another tax that's in a similar position, and its funds are going to get diverted to health services, which I mean it needs, but basically that means that we're within a year we're looking at missing half of the funding that we had asked for. But we have enough to last us through next year. So I mean, I guess there's that.
So I don't know if we have that many people viewing, but so Brian and I are kind of starting anew, and we're going to be streaming into the CFAR, which is the organization we're volunteering with, Facebook page soon. So I just thought, since
congratulations,
so thank you. So since this is the first time you've been on here, do you want to introduce yourself or?
Oh, yes. I suppose that since we're not on Ebon and James's channels, I should probably introduce myself. So, hello, everyone. Greetings, I suppose, fellow Windrifters and Vagabonds. My name is Aeolus Drift. My real name is Cosmo Vinegar. I'm currently a student teacher at Del City High School in Oklahoma City. With plans on teaching in that same public school district in the fall, this coming August after I graduate. By trade, obviously I'm a secondary education major, but I'm also an applied physics major as well. Interests aside from science include video gaming, writing, and the study of politics and political philosophy. I've been a part of this group since, I'd say, roughly the end of the 2016 election period. And honestly, it's been one of the greatest sources for political discourse that I've had personally in the long months since November happened. And we've been stuck in the political quagmire we've been in since.
Yes. Well, I kind of wanted you to introduce yourself because it's funny. I was just thinking with both you and Lucas on here now, I actually was lucky enough to get to interview Tim Canova because he signed the CFAR contract. And also we were talking about election integrity, the ballot destruction and stuff. But anyway, kind of before we got into that, we were talking about how there are so many, you guys, the young people, the millennials, like, you know, how stupid is that to call people the basement dwellers? And like, hello, they're like, they should be scared of this generation because you guys are so informed. And I mean, I was nowhere near when I was your age.
I'm certain at this point they are fearing my apathy.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you feel like I definitely think the millennial generation is far more politically active, but do you feel like you still have trouble like talking to people your age sometimes or just your peers?
It's less people my age. What it's been frustrating for me is the political isolation I felt with my own parents, who coincidentally I'm currently living with. This is actually, fun fact, this is actually the same bedroom I've lived in for barring 3 years of my life. This is the same bedroom I've lived in for basically my entire childhood.
Oh, so you know those walls, huh?
I know these walls very well. New paint. The paint scheme is relatively new, though. I've only been there for about a year or two.
So they're pretty strong Democrats, correct?
No, actually, they're independents.
Oh.
Okay.
But,
that sounds good to me, no?
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's a degree to which they they still subscribe into the mainstream into the mainstream, and
Right.
so they don't like the Democrats, but it's kind of one of those things where a lot of independents are get stuck in. Is this that they get trapped in the field where they're essentially de facto Democrats.
Yeah. Okay.
They hate the party organization, but they still vote for it consistently because the Republicans are worse. And so initially, where I came from is that when I was growing up is that I was very confused by this. Why would you consistently vote for Democrats but not choose to identify as a Democrat? I mean, it's one thing to have disagreements with the party's organization, but if you're going to do that consistently, why not just do it? And in fact, in 2016, I was actually thinking about changing it to my registration to Democrat. And I meant to do that actually in 2012, but I got lazy about it and just decided to stick with what my parents went with. But then 2016 happened, and I was fortunate enough that I realized I didn't have to change my registration in order to vote in the 2016 primaries for Bernie Sanders. So I kind of lucked out on that one.
Right.
And I campaigned for him where I could. Being a student teacher, it's kind of a student in the education department, it's kind of difficult to do that when you're having to go out for observations, and I was also a physics major at that point. So between those two, I didn't feel like I had the room to actually dedicate to canvassing, but I tried to show up for the events when I could. And I was very fortunate that I was able to actually help out at the Bedlam, not at Bedlam, but at the homecoming parade, helping to sort of do hand out flyers and volunteer for the Bernie Sanders campaign then.
Very cool. Well, I think when you look at all these people I just need to get my power cord because my laptop's about to die. And this is the only. That's okay. You know what? I'm glad you said that. I better check this. One time we were on here and I forgot to plug mine in, and the whole thing went in the middle of it.
I don't want that to happen.
No, let not do that.
That happened way too many times.
No, I'm plugged in.
Right.
Okay, I'm plugged in. Well, sometimes when I'm like venting about, the mainstream media narrative and the people that are kind of going along with it, my daughter will say, well, remember, my older daughter, remember that, these people, they don't realize what they think they're on the right side of things. And it's the whole identity politics stuff and all that. But it's just, I can't believe, Lucas, I think you said it's getting so absurd that more and more people are actually recognizing that they're pushing propaganda, but it still seems like so many people are not questioning it, and they're plugged into MSNBC and not getting the real story. And so, yeah, that's what's kind of hard to deal with. You want to just wake up,
Well, and it's not even just MSNBC, it's Netflix. It's all the entertainment stuff. It's video games. It's everything we can do to numb ourselves and distract ourselves from the coming crisis of just everything that's going wrong. We are basically doing everything we can to sedate ourselves and zone out for as much as we can. It's like we go to school or work, we come home, and then we zone out all night until we have to get up the next morning and do it again.
I fully admit to being kind of guilty of that.
And
most of us are.
It's like, most people don't want to learn about all the stuff going on because they just find it too depressing, and they don't feel like they have any ability to change it, and that's part of the problem. But it's also you can understand why they feel that way and why they want to do that. So it's like you can't blame them entirely, although I do think that we all share some responsibility in that. I do think we all should have the drive to want to learn and to help others and to fix the problems, even if we didn't create them. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading a book right now called Restoration Agriculture by Mark Shepard. And, you know, when you're learning about the way the food in our country is produced and all the interconnected web of food and politics and farming and everything. And it's like the way that we all eat, like every bite of food that we eat indirectly impacts every single crisis, you know, humanity faces, like every second. You know, every single bite that you take, every single spoonful or forkful, you know, has has a significant, you know, indirect impact on somebody else somewhere on this planet, and the quality of their life. And you know, like that's the power of boycotting and the power of supporting your local farmer and all that kind of stuff. It's like buying carrots from a local farmer does so much more to help the planet than to just buy carrots. You know, like if you want to eat healthy, like people don't realize. People are like, well, you know, I'll just buy the 29-cent bananas instead of the 89-cent bananas because, you know, the 89-cent bananas are expensive, even though if in reality, you know, they're way cheaper than they were 100 years ago. Like if you adjust for all of the inflation and everything, you know, it's like food now, even though people don't have money, food now is cheaper than it's ever been relative to how much people make and how much money is worth. Like, because if you were to buy a dozen eggs in 1900 or 1910 and translate that price to today, you'd be paying $16 a dozen. That's how much eggs used to cost back then, and people still ate eggs. You know, and it used to be all throughout history that traditionally you spent you know, most cultures spend a third of their yearly income on food. And in America, we spend 20% of our yearly income on food, which is incredibly low. That's like the lowest in history.
Sorry, I'm trying to share this and I can't figure out what I'm doing. Wait a minute. I guess I need to bring this down to...
Oh, I see it on the Speakeasy. On the Speakeasy cast.
How do I... Wait a minute. Let me put my...
It should be shared.
Just share.
Yeah,
share
but
screen.
when I share screen, because OBS is taking a picture of this.
Oh, I see.
How do I do that? You can see it here, but I don't think that's... Okay, hang on. Maybe that'll do it. No, see? Is it? Can you see it?
The Farm Fresh?
Yeah, but see, I don't think that's what's broadcasting. I had this problem in the middle of a Revolutionary Roundtable thing, and I've got to figure out...
Echoes on sale.
Yeah. This was in Whole Foods. A picture my husband took not too long ago, but it's... Do you see what it is?
Hardly organic.
The Echo. So my husband wrote Farm Fresh Amazon Echoes on sale today in the produce section at Whole Foods. But are they organic? Anyway, thought it was funny. But
they were recording your every conversation. Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, right.
Well, I knew you could grow azaleas, but I didn't know you could grow Alexas.
Oh man.
It's just...
I think Brian's about to die.
Anyway, hey, Brian, help me remember that. I need to figure out how to do that. Ebon's done it. You share screen. If I'm taking the picture, I'm broadcasting, so it would need to be down, but I can't bring it down in front. I'm sure there's a really simple answer to this. I'm just not. But I've had this come up a couple times because, like, I had a map or something I want to share in the middle. That's kind of what's nice about Uphill Media's broadcasting stuff. They have all those fancy settings. But
when you share, it just shows your background. It doesn't show.
I know. I don't know.
It's odd. I wonder why that is.
I'm sure there's like a really simple answer to this, and I'm just not thinking of. But well, so I want to know. So your parents then, do you feel like they are or what media do they like? TV news? Do they watch cable TV news?
Yeah, cable TV, MSNBC, but thankfully they don't just rely on MSNBC for all their information. They do read from a variety of sources.
New York Times, Washington Post.
Actually, not Washington Post. They tend to think that's a bit too conservative for their taste.
Okay.
But Huffington Post, McClatchy, they typically try to stick with ones that are traditionally considered reputable, or are sponsored by people that they know to be reputable, reputable sources. So The Guardian, stuff like that.
Okay.
That's a little.
So by no means are they like deep in the muck, but
Right.
their general trends of bias, I think, tend to be more mainstream.
Gosh.
And
Well,
that's
at least they're not like my folks who just get almost all of their news from MSNBC.
Right.
Well, the problem comes in too when, I mean, I think all of us that have been really plugged in saw this happen during the 2016 primary. And I know for me, I mean, I used to read, I had a subscription to the New York Times. I ended up telling them, they like actually called me because I canceled it. And I ended up telling this person that was just somebody working the, you know, whatever, the desk.
Yeah.
And I told them exactly why. And I can't remember what it was now, but it was an example of a staff writer had written an article and then she was told to change it by the editor because it was too, do you remember that?
I remember that story from a while back.
Yeah, I don't remember the writer's name now, but I told this person that, and I said that is not okay. That's not journalism. I'm not paying for this anymore. But when you tell someone, like, and I mean no disrespect to your parents, I mean there are plenty of very educated people, right, you know, where I live on my street that I guarantee you, like, there's a neighborhood party tomorrow, and I'm like, oh boy, somebody's going to be talking politics, and I'm going to have to just either shut my mouth or get into it with someone. But I mean, these are educated people. I live right by UNC.
Yeah,
professors and doctors and nurses and. But the thing is, when you start saying to people like that are busy, that aren't digging into the news all day long, you start saying, well, it's not just MSNBC, it's the New York Times, it's Newsweek, and you start saying that it's all of them, which it kind of is. Then they really don't listen to you because they think you sound nuts. Because how could they all be? But we saw it happen in the primary, one by one. It was like there was a huge bias, you know, from reporting that the Russia hacked that electric grid in Vermont, and then when they correct it, it's a little tiny thing at the bottom of the page. So
yeah, the thing I like to I try and stick away from conspiracy theories because I tend to think as where I can, because I don't like the idea of just wildly accusing people of being part of international of some kind of international conspiracy, especially because that's typically how right-wing organicism tends to build up. Although the Nazis themselves didn't specifically gain power because of this, it was an integral part of their own personal ideology, one that they proceeded to act upon once they had gotten into power. And so for that reason, I don't like just delving into that. However, I do believe in systemic analysis, and when you consider the notice trend, and I unfortunately was not smart enough to think about recording this when it was going on, but I do know that there were people who were, such as Debbie Lucinigan and many, and Nico House, and I think several others were taking notes of these trends. And when I think it was around the time of the DNC convention that it finally clicked on me that the fix had been in from the very start. And it became very clear, especially once the DNC had essentially turned into the Republican Party of 2003. And it was at that point I realized, so this is what it's actually come down to. It was this sort of eye-opening, kind of like Padme Amidala standing in front of the Galactic Senate as Chancellor Palpatine reforms the Republic into the Empire. And it's just sort of, so this is
how liberty,
how liberty perishes. And so it was at that point that I began to realize I couldn't be a part of it. I couldn't be a part of it anymore, because at that point I had to make a choice. I could vote for Hillary Clinton, and part of me, even at that point, was still feeling like that might still have to be my best option, because the other option is Donald Trump. And I honestly have no way of controlling what happens if he gets elected. But as I thought about it a bit more and more, especially towards the last days of that convention, I began to realize that really I had no power over Hillary either. And more to the point, if Hillary Clinton has been making some very, very strong provocations that she is wanting to expand the war in Syria and, if necessary, expand territorial aggression against Russia.
Yes.
Now, that for me personally, I was lucky that I was way too young to be a part of the initial phase of the war on terror. I was 7 years old at the time, so I never even had the chance to be drafted.
Wow. We're old, Brian.
My parents were terrified about the continuation of the war when I was growing up, even well into the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And eventually I began to realize that I remember Keith Olbermann, before he had lost his mind, or perhaps he had always been that way, and I just was too young to recognize it at the time. But he had always talked about what was really cynically awful about the politics of fear. And it was when those words came to my mind that I just realized, if I choose to give in to my own fear, I am going to enable the machine to do as it pleases.
Right.
And it was at when I realized I needed to have the courage of my own convictions to be able to say no.
Right.
And even if that meant having to stomach through Donald Trump, that's a consequence I'd have to bear. I may have to bear that responsibility. Fair enough.
Yeah, but it's not.
I do not want my name being co-signed. I do not want my name being directly co-signed.
Right. But it's not our responsibility that he won. So
it is.
It was Hillary's.
Do what?
It was her. It was.
No, it was. It was. But in voting for her, I would be co-signing that, and that's ultimate co-signing her to be able to do that. And because I've seen what that did to the elder members of my generation, how much they suffered for it, and how much I knew that if a war erupted with Russia, it was going to make the last 30 years look like wars of the last 30 years look like firecrackers. There was no winning a war with Russia. A war with Russia would be the death knell. Even if we won, it would come at tremendous cost. America would never be able to recover its position after that.
Well, you know what? This will get
China. You have the Middle Eastern states that will almost immediately jump at the opportunity to attack Israel, probably, since America has weakened itself to the point that it no longer can effectively monitor that part of the world. You've got numerous countries in South America who would probably be jumping at the heels to boot out the American troops on the ground. And as far as the situation in Asia goes, I mentioned China, but China obviously, but who knows where the other powers might be. Japan and Korea would probably be the most vulnerable if America collapsed.
Bye, Lucas.
So it's just, I kind of saw the kaleidoscope happening, and the worst case scenario, and this is what I was most terrified of, is the potential for nuclear warfare to break out. Because once people start getting desperate enough that when they're losing, they will resort to any tactic to win, even if it means committing suicide. Even if it means suicide.
Well, we've done. Oh, sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
just look at the policy positions, okay? If you look at everything Hillary ran on, okay, no.
Domestically, they were very different. I will grant that.
Yes. The thing, didn't want
policy-wise.
She did talk about offense.
Mm-hmm.
She did want to raise taxes on everybody, on the wealthy. She talked about this. This was part of her platform. She wanted to go to war with Russia. She wanted to basically create a no-fly zone that would have gotten us into war with Syria and quite possibly Russia. And look at where we're at now. So basically what Trump has done is essentially followed her playbook. So as far as I'm concerned, the guy should be wearing a pantsuit.
But wait, you mean... Okay, wait a minute. Wouldn't that just be called a suit then?
Yeah. So, but wait a second.
Like, this is like real talk. Like, that's actually something I never understood. Like, why is it that when women wear suits, it's called a pantsuit, but when men wear suits, it's just called suits?
I don't know.
It's like a very weird distinction that has no meaning
question.
Actually in reality, other than just because women.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that, I can't help but think of Dana Carvey's stand-up thing. If you have never seen this, well, you're younger, but you'd probably get it. It was from 2008, but it's called Squatting Monkeys Tell No Lies. And it's basically about, the title came from him talking about Scientology in the stand-up thing. But anyway, he does all these impersonations, and he does one of Bill Clinton, and he starts talking about the pantsuits. It's really funny, but it's hilarious all the way through. But no, didn't Trump early on, wasn't he saying he was going to pull out of Syria, and then, oh, bam, then we have the chemical attacks? I mean,
Yeah.
Right. Those are really well timed.
Yeah. So I actually witnessed. Oh, there you are. So I actually. Did you get booted off?
Lucas for the first time.
He's like, no, I'm.
Like Gollum, he crawls away from the light.
That's okay. Some people don't want to be.
We love you anyway, man.
Well, we only ever see Shirley like the top of her head, usually.
That's true.
I love. Have you guys seen Ebon? I don't know if he's still got it up on Twitter, where he had the collage of everyone up.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I don't know if his Twitter background.
Is it still? I guess I just
haven't
paid attention.
Okay, now I've got to see this. Now you made me interested.
I just wanted to add before I went to bed that, like, anytime anyone says that you're a conspiracy theorist for pointing out obvious corruption or lies, in the media, just ask them, so are you a coincidence theorist? Do you think it's just a coincidence that this person happened to donate this X amount of dollars to this person's campaign, and then that person, after being elected, just happened to vote in the best interest of that particular corporation who donated to them, and that's all just a coincidence?
Right.
There you are. Did you find yourself?
Just barely.
It's like your eyes.
Left of Jamal.
Yeah, right. But
all things considered, not a bad place to be.
I thought it was really funny. Well, I recognized my eyebrows, I think. I was like, oh, I'm right in the corner. But what was... Oh, yeah, and then you just see Shirley's head. What we always see.
Winkle just right above me on the left hand?
Do what?
Is that Winkle?
Yeah.
Yes, I got the best seat in the house. Let's see. I've got Dominic on my left, Winkle on my upper left, Ariel on my upper right. I've got Holly Seeliger just a step to the right after her. And I've got Jamal and Tim Black on my direct right.
God, I'm drawing a blank. What's his name? The one that wears the Captain and Tennille hat. Brian, you get the reference. What's his name? Damn
yes.
I can't think of his name right now. I know his name. Drawing a blank. Anyway, I thought that was a cool little collage he did. But, okay, so back to the Syria stuff. So I've witnessed a couple of times on Twitter where I thought maybe I was trying to send something and I was getting internal server error, or, I didn't know if it was just a lot of traffic going on at that point or whatever. But I have no doubt this week, I think maybe it was Friday. I was trying to tweet out an article that had an article from the Duran. Do you guys know that one? And it had the video from CNN where they're like, oh yeah, this is chemical weapons, and they're like sniffing in the kids' backpacks and stuff.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an odorless freaking chemical. You freaking moron.
And so I kept trying to tweet that, and I kept getting various, like it said internal server error, and then it would just kind of go to a page and say something's not right here, and then over and over and over, and then
also if you're going to sniff for odorless chemicals, I mean, I don't mean to be insulting, but why do you have such a death wish? Like, why do you want to die so badly?
Well, I would just say if you really want to sniff odorless chemicals,
I were a journalist at CNN, a field journalist for CNN, I would probably want to commit suicide too. But
that's a good point. Good point.
Well, that's like that guy on MSNBC who said that we didn't kill enough people with our missile strikes. He was like saying, we only blew up the buildings, nobody died. He's like, there wasn't enough blood. All right, well, we'll strap you to the next.
It's like these people think they're living in an Ultraman episode. It's just
crazy. It's so bizarre.
Well, I really want to meet that guy now. I want to meet that guy. Because I want to tell him. I want to tell him that, if you really want that much blood whenever we launch a missile, then we'll just send you on the next one.
We'll just strap him down to the next one.
Yeah.
It's sort of like they think, they're just going around just like, hey guys, we defeated the Boltons. Sure, they blew. Yeah, when we beat them, they all blew up in a giant column of fire that's like 50 meters, like 100 plus meters tall. But no civilians were injured in the process. Don't worry, guys. We got this under control.
Crazy. Well, I'm actually going to read off some notes, I think. I'll try to make it a little more interesting. But I was going to do this last weekend, and we got off track. But I listened to, I guess it's probably 10 days old now, but this was a discussion that Max Blumenthal, whom I really like and always go to if I need some.
And is this the Abby Martin thing?
No, this is just a conversation that I'm sure she's covered the same stuff about the white helmets and everything, but it was Max Blumenthal talking to Lee Camp, and so I took a bunch of notes because it's a lot to learn since our news hasn't been telling us this shit. So basically, he says that the white helmets. He talks about it being funded. He says U.S. taxpayers are funding white helmets, but they just call them Syrian civil defense or rescue workers. And then I guess this is someone who's, I don't know, been in charge of some of this. Former British intelligence officer James Mercier. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
I thought you were going to say Chris Steele for a second.
And okay, so he said that he was funded by the U.S. To the tune of $23 million, the UK and government of Qatar, and let's see, also, okay, they were also sponsoring Al Nusra, a Syrian affiliate of Al Qaeda, and have worked with ISIS. So it's like, wait a minute. So somehow we're funding these rebel groups, which, I first learned about this back, when we learned that we did that in Afghanistan, weapons against Russia, that we have funded these insurgent groups. But yeah, the general public in the U.S. is not getting this information, right? So what else did it say? So yeah, they were talking about the timing was kind of funny. Trump announced withdrawal from Syria, and then,
Yeah.
this chemical attack happens. So timing and motive. Okay, what was it? Uh, he's basically calling it a false flag. Their only hope was to trigger an attack. And it was, sorry, hang on. Duma, the area around Damascus. Hang on, I'm not sure exactly here. Army of Islam. I guess they were driven out of these areas and set up Islamist government of their own with Saudi and Gulf support and U.S. weapons. So, you wonder if it's like, is it really that direct? Can it really be that bad that we're actually, like, our military is really actually funding these groups in actual, like, hopes that they're going to do this and then we can attack? I mean, is it really that sinister? You have to wonder, like.
No, it's even worse than that. If you really break it down, it's even worse than that, because what it basically is that, as our foreign policy has been to be about, is destabilization. So the whole point is to destabilize these regions so that we end up in a perpetual. And who benefits from that?
Mm-hmm.
Our weapons manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
They make hand over fist over this crap. So that's how nefarious this is.
Okay, so you've been in the military. How long were you in?
I was in for 10 years.
10.
Well, almost 10.
Wow. Okay. And do you feel like the, I don't know, the lower level people, and do they get this? That this is what?
Some of us, I'll be honest with you, some of us do. Some of us did understand it. I mean, I told you the story. I had this, this was my first command. I was in an E2 squadron in Virginia. There was this officer, great guy, who just, I don't know, I don't exactly know why we get into that, but he had books by like Noam Chomsky that he let me borrow. What's going on?
Wow.
And we talk about it sometimes, but he never really got into why.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, I needed money to go back to school, and
well, right. Let's face it. That's why a lot of people. That's why my sister, who's no longer here, why her husband went into the army. I mean, I think he.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't the whole reason, but it certainly was a huge part of it. Was that he, hadn't gone to college yet and wanted the money for college, and just
right.
What good jobs are there without any college degree? So it's a jobs program. And it's just, it's so bizarre when you think about, I'll talk about Teddy from the Guion Journal again, because he wrote a great article this week. Like, we're bombing instead of like building communities. Imagine if we took all that funding, all that money, and made it a program of rebuilding stuff here. I mean, couldn't they make money off that somehow? It would at least be a good benefit in the end.
I was stationed in China Lake. China Lake happens to be, it's kind of like California's Area 51, essentially. Most of the base is actually located underground because it's a weapons test facility. And I got to talk to some of these contractors, and some of these guys who, let's see, for instance, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, who else? General Electric. I mean, I got to talk to some of these guys, and a lot of them really did not like the fact that they were building at the same time. They're like, but what else am I going to do? I've got a family. I've got to put food on the table.
Right.
And
right.
These are the people who are paying me, you know? And the thing that really is ridiculous about it is that these same technologies, if we use them more wisely, think of what we could actually be doing. Think about, for instance, much further ahead, someone like Elon Musk, if we took these same technologies and we're putting them into getting us into space. I mean, it's such a waste.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Ayo. I too am planning on going. I'm planning on going back to school, and I want to get. I want to get a degree in physics.
Mm-hmm. No, well, I mean, my opinion on Elon Musk is really mixed. Because on the one hand, I do think that space exploration is something that needs to be funded and it needs to be done if we as a species want to have any decent chance of survival past at least the 23rd century.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, and there are other aspects of what that I do enjoy that he is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm of the opinion never lose sight of the fact that he's also a capitalist, and he's playing this game in order to
absolutely
make himself a fortune in the long run.
Right.
Right.
Possibly the richest. It's a long game to become the richest man in the world.
Right.
And for now, for as long as it takes, he's willing to sink the cost at his own expense for a much bigger payoff later.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It shows in his labor, and it sometimes shows a lot in his labor practices. Because while he does pay his workers really well, the moment they begin to organize, he will shut them down.
That is true.
Crush them like bugs. And
that
this has been a pattern that's repeated in this company.
I hadn't heard that. Interesting.
Yeah. I have heard that. I've worked in the tech industry for some time, and I've heard that from others. So yeah, it does appear to be true.
Huh.
So I would say I look at him with at best cautious optimism.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't see him as much different than any other capitalist beyond the fact that he's slightly more amenable to his servants, but at the same time, they're still his servants. They aren't his partners.
Right.
Yeah.
And no matter how you squeeze that, that's ultimately how capitalism rolls.
Yeah, good point.
Right. So but do you hear that discussed in mainstream? I mean, you probably read about him on your own, I'm assuming, right? I mean,
most of these are things I found out mostly through people like you, Ebon, and stuff like that, or Tim, or sometimes when Tim Black or Nico bring in stories, even the Humanist Report, and that's how I get some of this information.
Mm-hmm.
I've long since completely locked myself out of the mainstream news cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even pay attention really to TYT anymore. I mean, that speaks a lot about where I am.
No, me either.
I mean, but like at a certain point in time, TYT was the place I'd go to. When I got tired of NBC, I'd go to the Young Turks.
Right.
Now, I don't go to either of them. I still see Jimmy. Sometimes I watch Kyle Kalinske. Although,
Garden.
Oh,
hey, Garden.
What's up?
Hey guys, what's up?
It's kind of Saturday. 2 weeks away from graduation, so kind of stressing over papers right now.
Taking a break.
Don't give up now.
Taking a break to talk about lighthearted things, right?
Yeah, like
war profiteering.
Right.
War profiteering, exactly. Bombing citizens. So speaking of which, this slightly unexpected note. Apparently, apparently, I don't know if you guys pay attention to much celebrity gossip, but apparently Natalie Portman is refusing to go to the Genesis Award.
I did see that
due to the recent bombing campaign, recent fighting in Gaza.
Awesome. Okay.
And apparently, this is this is due also and probably somewhat inspired by a long-standing feud she's had with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, that I've heard of.
Politically. Now there is a degree to which, I mean, yes, Natalie Portman is still part of the mainstream dialectic. However, as I wrote to Jenny Lin on a post that we had both commented on this, I think on Holly Seeliger's channel. I think there's an importance to her taking this stance at this particular time, and especially given the timing of it. And this is a little bit of nerd culture infusion, so bear with me. Part of this is that I do suspect that this is due to the feud aspect. She herself is identifies as a liberal, so at the very least, she's at least center left. Right. So dealing with the far right nut job like Netanyahu wouldn't really spark anybody's interest. Regardless of her personal politics about whether or not Israel should exist. The other aspect, though, and this is where the nerd culture infusion is that there is an aspect of gameplay being played here, in both the fact that she also is dealing with the likely going to gain a lot of positive reception from both her peers in Hollywood, but also, and this is where the nerdy part comes in, also a huge support from the Star Wars fandom, because this is one of those things about nerd culture that I think needs a little bit of explanation. When a lot of the actors for Star Wars leave the series or go on to other things, they carry those experiences they had with the film, filming with Lucas with them. Right. Mark Hamill, to this day, people, regardless of his work with the Joker, which still is, I would consider one of the finest voice acting gigs that performances that any voice actor could possibly give. He's at his core, he's still Luke Skywalker. To this day, and and it's not just that he portrayed Luke Skywalker in the films. He embodies Luke Skywalker in his day-to-day persona, and for the last 40 years, he's portrayed to the world the aging Luke Skywalker, who still has that sort of sarcastic wit to him, but keeps that fundamental warmth and kindness that endeared us to him in the first place. Right. And to the point that he was fighting with Disney over every creative decision that they were making with his character and what Luke Skywalker was meant to represent going forward. And obviously you have people like Harrison Ford who could care less about what their characters were and couldn't help but dream for the day they could move. But it's been a sort of a tradition that when you go into Star Wars, you become your character. You become your characters, and as such, even if you don't follow in your every day-to-day activities, you don't. Not everybody goes through it to the level Mark Hamill does, but there's at least but there's an expectation that at least among the protagonists, those who play the protagonists, that they should carry with them a piece of that, a piece of their character, to be able to embody their character's best traits when the time calls for them. And this is especially important when we talk about what Natalie Portman does, because the character she portrayed was none other than Padme Amidala, the ultimate symbol of pacifism and social democracy. The dying days of the Old Republic. She spent her time advocating for domestic policies when the rest of the Republic was thirsting for more and more blood. And despite her youth, despite numerous assassination attempts and attempted usurpations. And even the combined solicitation of her political mentor and her own husband to the very last minutes of her life, she stuck by her principles and continued to fight for her republic, for her democracy, for her people, and most importantly, for her family. And for her, so for Padme Amidala, whether in film or in real life, to be able to take this kind of a stance, especially with the justification and context that under which it's being done, it's huge. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not naive enough to believe that she made this decision because she played a pacifist character in a Star Wars film 10 years ago, over a decade ago, that somehow influenced her politics. What I am saying, however, is that because she did, and because she's still associated with that character years after those films have long since been decried and sort of delauded for reasons that kind of go besides her.
Right.
Still carries that influence. She still carries that image of the teenage queen.
Right.
Who carried wisdom far exceeding her years.
Right.
For her to take this stance now, even if it doesn't resonate in the broader politic of Israel, it will resonate with internationally with both those who agree with her politics, those who are her peers, but perhaps most importantly, for those who remember her fondly for who she represented.
Right.
And I think that's the important part in that.
So my question then is, okay, if you have actors with this kind of history of the kinds of roles that they've played, would you imagine that?
I mean, it'd be like Clint Eastwood.
What's that?
Usually it'd be kind of like Clint Eastwood It'd be kind of like the antithesis of Clint Eastwood showing up at a pro gun control convention.
Right.
It like if that happened, there would be a huge uproar about it.
Right.
Well, it may say something about that actor's actual personality in there. I mean, to take that role,
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's entirely possible that she was attracted to that role in the first place because that's just who she is. I mean, I don't know really much about Natalie Portman.
No.
But yeah, I mean, it could
a lot of actors who are closely associated with roles seem to go through cycles where they accept that they are this person to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then the other side of that cycle is where they completely reject the character and all associations with it, and do their best to purge any elements or associations from their lives. So it kind of goes both ways, as far as you were saying about an actor embodying the qualities of a character in their real life. That's emotionally difficult for many actors.
I think the best example of that is Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah. I'm not Spock. I am Spock.
Exactly. Perfect example of that.
So it's complicated. Yeah. I mean,
it's very complicated.
I'm not really sure if her roles or the character she played had anything to do with her decision regarding Israel. That's something you'd have to ask her about.
Mm.
But
it will be interesting to see how this plays out, though.
But as you said, nerd culture or whatever, anti-establishment nerds are happy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was checking Twitter today when I found out about this, and I kid you not, there were people, and I kind of participated a little bit in this as well, hailing Queen Amidala for standing up once again for peace and justice for the Republic.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, Natalie is a super famous actress. She's basically a global citizen at this point. So it's not really hard for her to take this position because this is the position of the rest of the Western world.
For the
I
most
actually-
part,
So she is taking the quote popular position here. We in
Right.
America just don't realize it.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
there's probably an aspect
Good
of
point.
that too. But I mean, this isn't the first time she's made these kinds of critiques either. In fact, I vaguely recalled that she did a document or a period film detailing the early years of of Israel's formation. That she directed and starred in, and it was the tale of an Israeli mother trying to raise her child during this hectic period, and initially it comes in kind of optimistic about their future and their new home, and then as the film progresses, becomes eventually slightly disillusioned with what it had sort of turned into. And she's by no means is she disloyal to the state per se, but there's a sense of there's a lingering sense of disappointment that this could have been so much more.
Well, I think she recognizes that there's injustice and suffering on both sides of this. For example, she seems to kind of want to take a neutral stance on this. For example, she says she doesn't support BDS. She doesn't support divesting from Israel. She doesn't support some of these measures that the left is doing. But yet she rejects Netanyahu and his crazy right-wing government. So she's not just going to one side or another, it seems.
No.
And I think her opinion reflects the majority, really. A lot of people aren't happy about what Israel is doing to Palestine, whatever their opinions are on the right of Israel to expand or exist or whatever. So, but at the same time, they recognize that, this is an established state. I think that the side that says let's get rid of Israel is being completely unrealistic. And whether it was founded justly or not is no longer a relevant question. Whether it was founded justly or not, it is here.
Right.
And we have to respect it as a state, but we also have to hold it to international law, for example.
Right.
And probably, I don't wish to sound like a defeatist about this, but that's probably the most realistic option we have towards dealing with Israel at this point. Is
Absolutely.
that unless the a wide swath coalition of the Arab nations are willing to culminate in an alliance for a full-scale invasion of Israel, which would be foolhardy on their part because the American government would probably swamp them unless Russia attempts to intervene.
Well, they have a nuke.
Quagmire,
Multiple
the country
nukes.
wants to get involved in.
They have nukes, so an invasion is out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, my favorite role of hers is in V.
Yes.
V for Vendetta?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really? Oh, wait.
Well, I just like that
Wait, was
movie.
she-
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Wait, was she one of the leading
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
the lead.
protagonists for that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
Yep.
Yeah, you gotta watch it again. I love that movie.
Alexa.
So sorry to kind of jump subjects here, but it triggered this because Gordon, you said the left, and earlier today I dared share a couple of things on Facebook, which I really don't like Facebook, but I got sucked in again. And I always know when I share things on Facebook, that's more like family and stuff, and so it's kind of touchy. But anyway, I shared something from CRTV, and I don't even know what that is. I just know it's conservative. Maybe it's I don't know, conservative something or other. But it was.
I think Crowder was affiliated with those people at some point.
Who was?
Steven Crowder and then that other one, Gavin McGinnis. I think they were all involved with that network. But sorry, go on.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't really care. I'm kind of like, at this point, I'm just glad that I can consider myself an independent and I don't shut out like other sides and go, I'm not going to listen to that. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and listen to Alex Jones most likely, but you know, I know there's so many people that just wouldn't even listen to this because it comes from a conservative, the conservative side. But so this was Congressman Ron DeSantis and 10 other lawmakers are putting Clinton, Comey, and other, well, what it says is swamp things on notice. But anyway, they're just basically talking about all the the corruption that's going on. But in the video, the guy that's interviewing and asking him questions, he says something, you know, in the left. And I just kind of thought to myself, like, it's funny when I hear I guess the right-wing news refer to the left, I'm thinking, who exactly are they talking about?
The liberals.
But, well, right, exactly. They're talking about the liberals and the people that are following Joyanne Reid and all that. And it's just kind of funny to me because I'm thinking, you know, even using the label the left it's kind of become meaningless because to them, I guess some of these people on really solidly on the right don't understand maybe that there's a difference and that some of us over here are really like, we want that corruption taken down too. You know, we're not in that camp, you know, but it's a sweeping, like it's all the left. And I think I made a point to say, you know, that, listen, don't lump us all there. So.
Right.
But I mean, like that's been a problem in pretty much every country and every political sphere since the dawn of
yeah, but
time.
It has. But so, now people should realize that, you know, I mean, yeah, there's a reason Hillary lost because a whole bunch of us said hell no. So it's just funny to me that they're still saying the left in that way that sounds like it includes everybody. So.
Well, a curious parallel to this would be like what happened after and kind of before the French Revolution. You had a whole bunch of groups that a whole bunch of political groups, like tens and tens and tens of them, each with hundreds of members. And they would present themselves as either laissez-faire or they would present themselves as, you know, radical liberals or something when their agenda was completely the opposite of what they were stating. So when these groups achieved some kind of influence, they would institute their actual goals. And it would cause a huge rejection from their base. And a lot of that contributed to the terrors and the blood that happened, you know, after the French Revolution. Was people felt betrayed not only by the king and whatever and the church, but by these specific groups. So I wonder if we're going to see a parallel to that. I mean, we are kind of already seeing it with Maddow and TYT in that, where you had, you know, a group not doing or not acting in a way that was consistent with what they were saying.
Right.
And then huge numbers of people turning on them.
Right. So yeah, oh, sorry, Brian, you go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to bring up one other thing that we really wanted to kind of tackle in these weekly are logical fallacies, because the better we understand these, the better we'll be able to see these kind of ridiculous the media likes to use, keep us from not really what they're really trying to get at.
Are you guys having, Brian, you're on my end, you're freezing a lot. Are you guys
Am I freezing?
There was some skipping.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So we had the idea we were gonna kind of start doing this tonight, but I don't know. I'm not. I could talk about the straw man fallacy, but we had this idea to kind of tackle this basically on our show, our little broadcast here, and talk about these logical fallacies. And there's a great group. Hang on. Again, I can't stand Facebook, but I followed them on here. And yeah, I actually ordered this like pack of cards today from them, so that because at one point I wrote a bunch of these down and had them at our like dinner table, so I could like make my kids groan, and I was like, we're going to talk about these and see how you hear this on the news, you know. But anyway, so I ordered this pack of cards really for my daughter, but who's 13. But
So you guys never went through any of this in university or high school?
not specific. Brian did.
I
I
did.
never specifically
I
I went through it in college. My first year, I took a logic course for a summer in order to fill credits, and because it gave me a good excuse to start learning philosophy.
I took an intro to philosophy, but as far as like, I think this should be like required along with financial literacy in high school.
Absolutely.
To
Yeah.
They
have
should
these.
start teaching rhetorical fallacies, etc., like in high school.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
as you know, as a
Logical fallacies.
right. Now, as a journalism communications major, I mean, you're just kind of trained to look for the news and facts, but I mean, I never, intro to philosophy didn't specifically cover these. But I mean, you can go through the list and like, wow, oh, this is just everything on the damn news every night, you know? And
Well, philosophy like is a lot like psychology. People
Yeah.
like start taking these courses and they're getting into something that they didn't expect. They are expecting like these deep conversations like with the professor and the students going over all these ideas. And like it's usually not going to be like that till like year 6 or 8.
no, what I remember from my philosophy class was a discussion of if you take an I think I had an old Volkswagen at the time. I think that was one of the examples, but it was like if you take an old Volkswagen and you slowly replace each part, is it still the same car? You know, useful things like that. So, no, I don't remember covering logical fallacies. But anyway, we thought it would be cool to do, you know, like maybe just like one each week and like have like a whole bunch of examples. Now, the one that pops in my mind, I think it would fit this category, is the straw man argument. But correct me if I'm wrong here. So, this was actually my never Hillary moment. So, going into the 2016 primary, I mean, I will call it neutral to negative opinion of Hillary. And I think the only reason it wasn't more negative was I was just kind of checked out the previous election due to illness and stuff. So I wasn't really paying attention. But anyway, it was October of 2015, I believe. And it was after a debate where, you know, they got on the subject of gun control, and Bernie says, we need to stop shouting about gun control, right? Now, Bernie had said this on numerous other broadcasts, numerous other interviews. It was just something he said. We need to stop shouting, you know, just his catchphrase way he talked about it. Well, Hillary, I think it was like the next day or shortly after the debate, she was somewhere doing a speech, and she makes this statement, and to me, you can watch her, look at her face, because I've retweeted this clip so many times. You can tell that she knows she's just talking crap, and she knows it's staged. She knows it's designed to confuse people. She knows it's designed to misrepresent Bernie, but she does it anyway. She says, you know, sometimes people just think when a woman says something, she's shouting. And she turned it into this like sexist thing about Bernie, that what he said was really about something else. And, you know, you can hear the crowd is like roaring, and like, because they're roaring against sexism. Well, yeah, of course you would be. But then what happens is none of the people that heard that ever go back and look at the debate and see what actually happened, or go back and look at the clips of when somebody on CNN asked Bernie about it, and he's just kind of like, yeah, that's not, no, I've said that a bunch of times, you know, whatever. But they never go that far, so they just assume that Bernie's sexist, and then we're off. We've got months and months of Bernie's sexist. So I think, does that fit that fits straw man, does it not? Am I incorrect there? Like,
So yeah, it does because what basically is taken our and the person in responding to your argument doesn't just bring up what you just said, but then tries to basically add on something else that really doesn't belong, and then that's what they end up attacking.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Well, we could also kind of make a game out of it. Like I can make a statement or something, and I'm kind of trying to think of one that contains several logical fallacies.
Oh, you'd be perfect
And
for
then
this.
you have to identify them.
Okay.
Oh, that would be awesome.
All right, so let me think of one. Like it's right on the tip of my tongue. I've almost got it. All right, so, all right, Kelly, I heard that TYT was corrupt. If this is the case, what does that mean to you? Everyone's reporting on it, including CNN, NBC, and even Natalie Portman agrees that they're corrupt. Cenk is scum. Cenk is scum. So how many fallacies is that? Can you identify them? Bro, I'm you probably got a better shot at it since you went through it.
Well, there's a bit of an ad hominem attack there.
Yep. Feel free to look at the list, dude. I'm looking at the list because I'm trying to.
I don't think I can name, I don't have them memorized, but I just recognize bullshit when I hear it. So I guess
it was really sloppy, because I'm thinking of it off the top of my head.
Okay.
There's alleged certainty in there. There's appeal to celebrity.
Well, this, it's yourlogicalfallacies.com. And
I might have tried to fit too many in there. I probably should have only done one or two. Basically, it's relevant, ambiguity, presumption, ad hominem, begging the question.
Yeah, begging the question, yeah.
Yeah, no, I never actually learned these labels. I think I just recognized them. I mean, I don't know, but the fallacy. You presume that because a claim has been poorly argued or a fallacy has been made, that the claim itself must be wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think you can just read through all of these and recognize that this is our daily cable news. I mean, that's what's so scary about it.
All day, and I think it's our state of journalism in this country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
it is
ridiculous.
Oh, and I forgot it. The equivocation was in there too, because I was like, they're just like NBC and shit.
Oh, right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, Garden, you should be part of this. So, what we kind of like to do, it'll be like a Schoolhouse Rock for logical fallacies. No, I don't know. We just thought we would cover these and come up with examples. I don't know. I don't see anybody else doing that. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know all the terms, but I just recognize when it's incorrect.
Well, a good one that we're always seeing, especially nowadays, is probably false dilemma. Look up false dilemma.
Okay.
There's only two options, man. We got to do this.
Oh, yes. Yep. Yeah. And so that backs someone in a corner and puts them on the defensive.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
And it's simply false. I mean, there's very few instances in reality where you really only have two decisions.
Two choices, yeah. That's right.
I mean, sure, you would prefer one over the other, but...
But, yeah, when you have a public not recognizing these, and then, you back someone into a corner with one of these, and then they try to defend themselves, it's horrible.
And that's why these conspiracy... Because... people don't know how to look for logical fallacies, and they just fall because they don't realize that they're being duped.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. I was gonna ask Aeolus. Wait, are you still here? I was gonna ask him if his parents, if your parents had what their thoughts are on you, like only watching and listening to independent media. Do they
I
think
mean,
that's a problem? Do they?
What they're worried about is me getting going full radical and doing something reckless and getting in bed with people who are really dangerous, people who don't have any care or regard for human life, only care about what their the objective they have in their mind is. And I like to think that I've been able to stabilize myself well enough at the moment to not let myself get swept up.
I'd say so.
Swept up like some others have. I feel sometimes like, say, people like Lusignan has to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, but we've already gone over that,
But-
haven't we, Gordon?
And I don't necessarily mean that to be to demean Debbie's own contribution, because I do think that she,
Right.
Regardless of what I might feel towards her politics, I do think that she has made very valuable contributions to our analysis of the world, the way we hear it, look at the world, and I don't want to discredit that. It's just simply because I think that her politics go a bit too far for me to personally stomach.
Well, I think we can talk about, this is an example, and I know I brought it up before, Brian, but
which is kind of a strange thing to say as an anarchist, but
the thing about where the kid that was at the high school, this is just one example, but to me, there's such a perfect logical explanation. I don't even understand why it became a thing. So this kid, I think it's David Hogg, the one that's the journalist guy who was there during the shooting, and I didn't pay that much attention, but I think, didn't he like film some of it from the closet when they were actually, holed up in the school? But then, some days later, whatever, when he's on wherever he was, cable news, he says, I got on my bike and I rode as fast as I could to the school. And I started seeing on Facebook lots of people posting, how did he wasn't there. He's an actor. And I just stopped for 2 seconds and said, well, hang on a minute. He probably just came back later, right? It was so obvious. Yet it got all these people worked up and thinking that he's an actor. And it's like there's a logical explanation, and it's you've got a situation, I think, where people are so distrusting of the news that they're going to jump to everything is they're lying to me. Everything is a conspiracy
And that's
theory.
incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, it's very dangerous. But it's just, I'm seeing people that, I mean, maybe they're not the Rhodes Scholar, but I think they're smart enough to just figure that out. And I just don't understand. I guess it just takes off and it kind of snowballs and people pass it around. And
well, regardless of whether you agree with any commentator on whatever issue or not, these YouTube commentators should not be used as primary sources.
No.
And I don't see why so many people do use them as primary sources.
Yes,
they get all their news from them. They're not researching the stories. They're not researching the facts.
Right.
They're just going by whoever it is, TYT, Tim Black, Jimmy, whoever. They just go by it.
You can't do that. I mean, my rule of thumb is that I look at many different ones and take, you can kind of find the truth in the triangulation of all the stuff you read, or hopefully you do. But yeah, you can't possibly just get it from one place.
The best shot I think that the average citizen has, and the easiest way to do it, is check it against a couple of international sources that are at least fairly independent.
Right.
Learn a couple of what the fairly independent news sources are out there, and compare them against what the U.S. media is telling you, and try to get something out of that. Now it's not going to be perfect, but you have a life. You can't spend 6 hours a day.
Right, and that's the problem. That is the problem right there. And I think that's what, cable news especially, and maybe some of these YouTubers are counting on,
Yeah.
is that people don't have the time, so they need it encapsulated in a like 30-minute summary, and that's it. I always check, like, it says socialist in the title, but world, so that will make some people not want to look at it, but World Socialist website, hang on.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
got really good stuff. World Socialist, WSWS.org.
Home of the Marxist-Leninists.
But it's not the
Or
commentator.
maybe it's more the Trotskyian. Or maybe it's more the Trotskyian faction, I think. Isn't it? Fourth Internet. Because it's
What?
run by the Fourth Internationale.
Are they more? I'm not sure whether they have more Trotskyite leanings or whether they're Leninists or even. I'm not really sure what the politics of that.
The Fourth International was established by Trotsky. So I assume that they probably have more Trotskyian influences, than most of the other organizations, although I don't know how much that has persisted after Stalin started purging Trotsky's subordinates.
That's a good catch. I missed that reference entirely.
To me, when I look at this, I'm always looking for bias, but I haven't read everything, but
But it's another aggregate site, right?
Right. Well,
you got to watch out for aggregates.
Right. That's true. So I think you just have to look at multiple places, and you have to question everything you read. But I guess, yeah, it's a full-time job. I can't keep up with it, and that's kind of all I do. So I don't know how people that don't have time, they're turning on the television while they're cooking dinner and listening to this nonsense.
To speak to your point about media and their blanketing the left with the same color, and logical fallacies, like there's the fallacy of division, of course.
Yeah. Right.
And that's, they assume that like everything that's a part of this quote whole shares all the same attributes.
Right.
So you see that over and over, and it's another one of these damn, basically rhetorical games where they try to keep control of the Overton window. They want to keep control of public.
Oh, no, there's that term, Brian. Okay. I'm not going to get into why on here, but please,
What?
Tell us
the Overton window.
Have people overused it at some point in your presence?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Overton window, please.
Oh, boy.
They don't like it to move. That's what I could tell. They like it to stay in the same.
Oh, boy. Strap yourselves in, kids. Professor Vinegar is about to take you on a lecture.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Here we go.
The Overton window is essentially a political tool that is often used in political science to describe the balance of political power. Essentially, what the Overton window measures is what is accepted within mainstream political dialogue. It typically defines what the center, the right, and left of any political scenario scene should be. The issue with one of the issues that we've had with modern with the so-called modern left is that there's been a strategy of consistent appeasement. Now, by no means is compromise an inherently terrible thing, and I should clarify this because I think that sometimes when we discuss this, it's easy to confuse this for Puritanism. This stands for Puritanism, which is not what I think any of us here advocate for.
But what you're describing causes the slow rightward drift of the Overton window. Right.
So what essentially occurred, especially over the past 30, 40 years in America, for example, there's been this slow trend rightward in order to pursue the economic interests of the bourgeoisie, and also because of the success of Reagan's neoliberal campaigning, there's been a desire to replicate that within Democratic circles, on top of trying to siphon funds from the Republicans in order to remain competitive. And so what we've noticed is that there, especially when we start talking about this a concept of radical centrism, is this desire to appease the right in order to keep the left from getting into power, which is a natural trend that's been in a Western society since the beginnings of the 20th century. What this has unfortunately led to is that the Overton window over time has shifted further and further rightward. And this is a trend that's not only occurred in the United States, but also within the United Kingdom as well.
Well, and in a broader context, almost all human societies experience this to a degree. It has to do with the distribution of resources. But I'm sorry, go on.
To a degree, but it's not like the societies that we had before were necessarily liberals or left-wing stalwarts.
Well, they drift towards more consolidated control. Right. They drift toward forming consolidated power centers, which produces effects that we would consider right-wing or authoritarian.
Right. Although this does also not necessarily apply in every case, i.e., Leninist Russia during the early 20th century, is particularly after Stalin takes control of the country. With that said, however, the key thing about the controlling the Overton window that people need to understand is that unlike the horseshoe, that politics doesn't really run on a horseshoe theory, like a lot of liberals and centrists like to think it does. There is no magical point at which the radical left becomes the radical right. There may be points in which people on the left and right agree with each other on certain topics. That does occur. But the idea that left-wing radicalism suddenly becomes right-wing radicalism is only an excuse used to justify how similar tactics used by both radical fascist and anarchist and certain anarchist factions, and how a nation like Soviet Russia could descend into dictatorship. Which I can see the appeal of that. It provides a useful tool in which to analyze it. Unfortunately, when put into actual practice and not being used as a post hoc justification for historical trends, it becomes very clear that trying to apply this as a matter of practical analysis, real-time analysis, is incredibly flawed, because the problem with centrism is that it figuratively guts itself of any tooth, which without any significant opposition for the right tends to shift the country further and further right.
Well, then there's another way to look at the Russian
natural inclination of our system in particular. If we were talking about this in Soviet Russia, you might see this trend opposite. But at least here, the dominant centers of power exist on the right, because that's where the economic interests lie. And so, by dismantling the left, you just defeat the only opposition that those business interests have. And so the country as a whole shifts right, not necessarily because the population has, but because the economic centers of power have demanded. So
well, that's what happens when.
This is why it's better to look at politics through modern politics, I think, through a fishhook theory rather than the horseshoe theory that a lot of liberals tend to adopt.
So how would you, Brian, what do you think about, I was trying to find the email, the big one about the Overton window, although it was mentioned many times. I don't know how to talk about this without...
So what's the story behind that? Why are you guys, as soon as Overton window was brought up, you both almost vomited?
Okay, so we have ejected from Revolt Against Plutocracy's CFAR contract. So...
You revolted.
we're gonna do a Facebook page, the Revolt Against Plutocracy. Yes. So I'm not gonna get petty personal stuff, which actually doesn't really involve either Brian or I, but in a nutshell, it became a, how do I put this?
I think you've described some of these problems before. They were pandering to candidates, basically, looking for names to put on their list.
Well, yeah, okay. So in a nutshell, we said this on Uphill Media, but the two people, the original author of this CFAR contract is John Rachel, and I guess I knew that, though I didn't know that it was really his alone. All I knew was that he and Victor Tiffany had worked together, and that there was a disagreement, and that John was out of the country. And I really, I friended him on Facebook, which I only got Facebook in December. I don't even pay attention to it. But, so I didn't really know anything. I just knew they had a disagreement, whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't need to know the details. Let's just keep moving on. Well, things got a little weird in our alliance with Real, to say the least, with Real Progressives, and there was a bunch of stupid drama that ensued, and then somebody decided to say, well, if a candidate has to lie to get elected, basically, how do I put this? I took it to be that that this person was meaning if a candidate has to lie about supporting a particular thing, by lying, I mean just kind of leave it out, because their constituents wouldn't understand it, then that's kind of okay. And it sort of devolved into this lying is okay. And Brian and I both said, what? Wait a second. No. Because if we're gonna say that lying is okay, then there's no point in this contract. If we, as the people that are pushing it and getting behind it and interviewing people and all of that, are going to sort of encourage that behavior, what's the point? It's really, there's no point at all. So we bailed, and we are working with the original author of the contract. Now the original contract doesn't have the two things that I pushed to have added, but I think we don't know if those will be changed or not, but at this point it doesn't really matter. We're full on into the primaries, and with election integrity that we had added on as number 2, we're just talking about it all the time. I mean, so I think sometimes, well, it's not on the contract. The contract isn't legally binding anyway. It's just kind of a promise to voters. So anytime we talk to a candidate, I mean, I know that's the thing I'm talking about is election integrity. So that's kind of what happened. But this person that was saying it's okay to lie kept bringing up the Overton window, and that you needed to stay within that. And I honestly kind of only half read some of the emails. So Brian,
I kind of wanted to throw him out the Overton window.
Oh, that's right. You said that. Anyway, I don't really know. Do you have an analysis of do you have a more clear idea of what I kind of, look, let me be very blunt. I kind of took the whole thing as somebody trying to get everybody distracted, get everybody down this rabbit hole of nonsense, and so I kind of ignored it. And that's kind of how I took it. So I didn't
That's the way I took it, yeah.
Yeah, so because I think that everybody can kind of agree, anybody that means business in this movement, that lying is just no.
Yeah.
Not okay. We're not going to get behind it. But
well, the premise always seemed messed up to me. The contract is unenforceable.
Right. Well, it is. It is. But it's kind of like.
Like if you had like a bunch of like money behind you and you got them to sign a contract like that, then it would be enforceable, of course, because you could say, if you don't follow the contract, I'm withdrawing my funding.
I hear you, but
until
I'll
that
say this.
happens-
Maybe this is just the idealist in me talking, but I think that power in numbers is much more powerful than money. And if you look at what, when Tim Canova announced, that he was running as an independent, the very next day he had a huge increase in support, both people sending money and just, hallelujah, you left the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And so while we're not saying, you need to be an independent to sign CFAR, I'm particularly excited about the independents that sign on. I also understand that some of them have to run as a Democrat, but it's about their message and are they on board? Like, anybody, Beto O'Rourke. So Sima Hernandez signed a CFAR contract. Beto O'Rourke hasn't. Why hasn't he? Well, I'm guessing because he's not really on board he's not the real deal. And so, it's not an enforceable contract, but we're being really vocal about what, this is the type of candidate that's signing CFAR. And it's going to kind of just get a reputation that the type of candidate that signs this is going to actually represent the people. And, not just say that they, are for all these things. Now, of course, we could have people that don't really mean it. But I think basically the Beto O'Rourke's or anyone else that's just trying to pull one over on everybody doesn't really want to be associated with something like our organization. Because that would get them negative pushback from, I don't know, their donors or whatever. So,
unfortunately, like it's demonstrable that numbers do not overpower money in this system. It's not only the Yale study that everyone quotes that demonstrates.
Yeah, you're right.
We can also look at other studies, and we can just look at what we know and the context. All they really have to do, like in a district, is gerrymander it to cut you out. And that's even if you get the numbers in the first place. That's if you defeat their overwhelming media and propaganda machine.
Yeah, but that's
the value in forming these quote reformer movements, I don't think lies in enacting direct political change through candidates. But it allows people to unify under certain populist political philosophies so that going forward in 8 or 10 years, maybe we can sort some of this bullshit out. Sort the wheat from the chaff. Get rid of these people who are we got to stay within the Overton window and all this other stuff. You can get rid of those people. You can get rid of the scammers.
Right.
And it's going to be a process. And, there is a place for these reformer movements, but I think, unfortunately, a lot of people who are in them, they believe that they're going to see change in the next cycle or two through these reform movements, and they're not.
No, I actually don't. Of course, I hope that, some of our candidates somewhere will win. I'm really hopeful about Tim Canova. He has a lot of support. And we've talked
in fact,
about
he dumped Act Blue like that is an excellent sign.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
I saw what's his name? Oh shit! He used to come to some of our meetings. Gabe, I think it's Politicor on YouTube. He is hardcore. And he brought that up. I just happened to catch it. And then within a couple of days, I saw that Tim Canova had ditched that, which is good.
That is good.
You're right. It's a long process, but I think the fact that we had Sima Hernandez get as much support as she did, as many votes as she did, we have to dig in our heels though and say no, we're not going to just turn around and vote for Beto when it's him against Cruz. No, it's just not going to happen. And so it is a long process, but I don't know. That's kind of why I'm in it. I actually for example, there's a candidate that I think I'm going to get to talk to soon, who was ex-military. and is being about as vocal as Tim Canova is now that he's free on everything, including, foreign policy stuff. And it's like, wow, those are the kind of people that we get to talk to in doing this. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and it probably is a really long process. It's going to be disappointing that we don't have more success in 2018. But there's no other choice. It's either give up and just say, okay, well, it's never going to happen, or keep going and be vocal about it. And, we could have, anybody can sign it. I joke that Mitt Romney can come along and sign it if he wants to. But hopefully we get a chance to interview them, and they just wouldn't want to be associated with our group because, we're scary, scary whatever we are.
Well, it's a good thing that people aren't all doing the same thing, because if everyone did what you were doing, it wouldn't work. And if everyone was doing what I'm doing, it wouldn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, divestment is a good thing, but it has to be measured. And it has to be like, you have to turn the heat down kind of slowly on it, or else you cause massive crashes. Yep. So if everyone was like me, there would be massive crashes. Mm. And the electoral system would crumble. Mm-hmm. But like, knowing that, and on your side, like, I feel at least, and don't take this as an insult, if everyone did what you did, we would continue in this loop forever.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so it's a good thing that there are certain segments of the population doing different things, because eventually we're going to find strategies that work, organic strategies that are a combination of philosophies and ideas.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I've said this many times. It can't just be one strategy. We've got to tack at as many different sides as we possibly can, because that's how you wear this machine down.
Mm-hmm. And you know what I've noticed recently? I constantly talk about election integrity. I think it's important when you talk about something that the mainstream considers a conspiracy, right? If you were to tell any Democrat, a year ago, or even 6 months ago, actually maybe even yesterday, I don't know, that, look, the Democratic primary was rigged, or it was, choose whatever word you want. I had this argument with a friend of mine that I don't talk to anymore, because she just thought I was crazy. She thought I don't know where she thought I got the information from, but I sent her links. She didn't look at it. But we keep talking about election integrity. So if that's something that we can get election integrity activists who are actually in the courts right now fighting this shit, like Ray Lutz, John Brakey, Tim is fighting this in Broward County, and we can get the candidates, and I'm not just saying CFAR candidates, I'm not trying to sell that, I'm just saying whatever label they have, but they're the real deal. They are aligned with all of those people fighting for the election integrity, and they keep bringing that to the surface and talking about it. You'll know, recently that more and more people are talking about it, about what actually happened. Tim made his big announcement. I'm out. I can't fight this fight with this same person that threw out my ballots, not being removed before the race again. So he's out. What else? We had Ed Schultz come out and actually say and tell the story about what happened with MSNBC telling him to not cover Bernie Sanders' campaign. So it seems like I think we've had a recent little kind of tilt of people that maybe were kind of scared to talk about it, or just knew they were going to get ignored, to now more and more, I hate to put it this way, but reputable people. Because when Tim Canova talks about it, he doesn't say, my election was rigged. He doesn't say that. He says that there's some stuff that needs to be looked into. He's a smart guy. He says this isn't on the level. And when you attack it that way, and you don't just make that leap and say, oh, it's rigged, and you just talk about the facts, and more people catch on and hear that, more and more people that have a reputation for these election integrity activists. They're no yahoos. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time. And so when they're saying, look, this is not right, like statistically, this is like impossible for this to happen. There's only so much ignoring you can do when like all of them are saying the same thing. So I guess that's what I'm hoping for when I say in numbers. It's not just candidates and voters, but it's like taking an issue like the fact that our elections aren't fair and actually having people that examine this talk about it. So.
Well, that's where having the numbers is going to help, because the more numbers, the more lawsuits.
Yeah.
And that is an important part of the process. And we need to step our lawsuit game on the left and just start trying to do, like I said, a reform kind of like we did to get the EPA in place, which is you just keep suing them over and over and over, and different groups keep suing them for different things. Again, 90% of those cases fail. 5% like something happened, and then you'll get like the 5% or less that really did something.
Yeah, I remember you saying this some time ago. Like it's going to need to happen in the courts.
Have the courts changed too much since the 1960s for that to happen? That's a question. Like,
I don't know.
Also, the other reason I'm always advocating for the courts is because I do, in fact, have respect for the Constitution and the rule of law. And this is the process that was laid out for us. If we can't find redress in the polls, we can go to the courts. That's what they're there for.
Right. Speaking of it, how insane is it that we didn't hear anything really about the DNC fraud lawsuit. I mean, not it wasn't trending and all that, but the DNC is suing all of Russia, WikiLeaks, and the Trump campaign, and it's everywhere, right? Oh my God.
They're just spraying bullets.
What court are they going to bring that to?
Yeah,
that's my question. Are they going to bring that to the UN? Yeah, good fucking luck with that.
Bring it before Judge Judy.
Security Council.
Maybe Judge Judy will hear that case.
Right. Oh my God.
They're just spraying bullets like usual. Like, they don't have a quality message, so they just shoot out as many garbage messages as possible. And
that's exactly it.
And as many garbage strategies.
If nothing else, then I can at least vaguely admire their determination to sink their own boat as quickly as possible.
Yep, the Titanic, like Bernie said, they all have seats, first-class seats on the Titanic.
They just keep rearranging the deck chairs.
Yeah.
Well, it's a kamikaze style attack, except they don't realize that they're kamikazes. Some of them are flying directly at we're going to make it. The plane's good enough to survive this hit. I'm sure of it. I've got enough. I put enough money into this plane. It's going to survive it.
I don't think so, Tim. I don't think so, Tim.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know. I can't wait till this neighborhood and the time when I definitely considered myself a liberal. I was surrounded by a bunch of people I know voted for Trump, and or I'm just always at odds somehow. So yeah, this is pretty much liberal.
We have a lot of work to do.
Huh?
We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I just wonder because this is it's a kid party basically, but the entire neighborhood is going to be in and out all day long, and I just know that it's going to come up. And I'm either I have to just bite my tongue or speak up. Not sure. Well, we had people walking by. No, it was right. It was Halloween, and we had our Jill Stein signs out, and we got some nasty comments from neighbors. We only moved in August, so we didn't know them that well, and they're puzzled. I think they're puzzled. I don't know. If they want to open that can of worms, I'm happy to have a conversation, but we probably will need to take it out back.
They opened it, so
yeah.
I don't know what they were expecting.
I was at this sounds so bourgeois of me. I was at my Pilates class But I decided to do Pilates because I can't run because of my spinal fluid leaks. So something to build muscle. And, you know, this woman's just talking to the instructor, and it's all about the Cohen case and all the Trump witch hunt. And I'm sorry, I'm not, you guys know I'm not a Trump fan, but just all the talking points. That's all she was saying. And I just brought up, I forget how she mentioned something about election integrity or something, and I said, oh, well, did you hear about Tim Canova's case and the ballot destruction? And they just both looked at me like, I mean,
I think the messaging the anti-Trump messaging saturation is like crazier than maybe any other type of messaging saturation we've ever seen in our lives.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they're so, these reasonable, educated people are so beside themselves with, like, all rational thought has gone out the window. And so it was funny because the instructor, I can't quite pin where she seems like a little bit more reasonable. And she kind of listened and she was like, Tim Canova, that sounds familiar. Like, she knew, you know, I said he ran against W. Wasserman Schultz. And the look this other lady cuts me was like, she's probably, oh, she's a Bernie bro. But I was like, oh my God, it was just parroting. Like, I got home and I pulled up MSNBC online because I haven't watched, I don't even have cable anymore. It's been almost 2 years. So I pulled it up, and sure enough, everything she was saying was practically like word for word on the website. Like, just, she was just parroting it. And not even, I don't know. So that's probably what I'm going to counter tomorrow. I'll give a report back. Bedtime?
Yeah, I need to get to bed. I've got a something I'm volunteering for tomorrow. It's a beach cleanup with Greenpeace, so I got to get up early for that.
Well, it's time for me to refill this cup, and I think I'm going to take this with me tomorrow next door.
Oh, absolutely. Well, have a good night, you guys.
Yes,
good chat as always.
Yeah,
yep.
Thank you for coming to talk.
Good night, everybody.
And you too, Aeolus. Very nice to see you after so long.
See you again, Aeolus.
Yeah, it was nice seeing you all as well.
Yeah.
I've honestly missed having these conversations.
Yeah.
I just wish, you know, I could. Oh God, I just spent all day in a class detailing the rise of the Third Reich.
Oh boy.
Wow.
Well, let me leave you, because I was going to bring this up, but it gets into a whole side conversation.
Okay.
But let me leave you with a parting thought, Aeolus. Consider that the Russian Revolution might not have been a communist revolution or a leftist revolution, but a populist revolution. And when you think about that, consider that most of the people who participated couldn't read.
Wow.
So, like, you know, how far does political ideology go when motivating a revolution? Like, so anyways, that's a whole other conversation.
The answer is it runs deep.
Okay, we'll continue that next weekend then.
All right.
And hey,
see you later.
Seriously, Gordon, think about, I don't know, maybe you want to pitch in or participate with the logical fallacies thing. Sounds like you've got a
it sounds like you
on it. We were kind of thinking.
I don't know what you guys want to do with it.
Well,
like, I have to, like, go over these things with students, like, on a fairly frequent basis.
Well, we're kind of joking about it being like a public service announcement. Like, here, this is how you, I mean, I'm not that anybody's watching, but whatever. You know, this is how you detect these. And, I mean, I talked to my daughter about some of them, and I don't, like I said, I don't know how to, all the labels, all the terms, because I never took a class on it. But I can just recognize, I'll say, like, you see how this is false and what they're trying to make you think here. But there's no basis for it. They're just making an assumption, and then they build on that assumption.
Well, I try to do that in our conversations, except I just don't bother with the terminology.
Right. Yeah.
Because most people aren't going to understand, like, what I'm saying if I, you know, say it anyway. So just to add an extra step or two to it, and, you know. I mean, and then you could just throw a label on the end of it and say, well, this is what the fallacy was.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You know, but I don't know.
So this website, I'll just say this really quickly before we go.
All right, I'm going to turn in for tonight. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Aeolus.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hold you guys up. I shouldn't have brought up other topics.
Oh, no, it's
No,
okay.
that's cool.
So if you go to this, your logical
will later.
fallacies, your logical fallacy is .com. They've also got another segment. Now, what the hell? Where did it go? It's something, another thing they're doing, like your bias is. Anyway, check out the website if you're interested. But I thought it was really cool, and I'm sure like I like listening to that podcast. You Are Not So Smart. Because it makes you really think. All of us are guilty of this, some more than others, but of these flaws in our thinking. So, anyway, I think it's cool.
Definitely.
So, yep.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, you guys. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.